Hey guys, it's Jen, and I'm back with another Script and Uplift video. Here I've just got laid out some of the products that I'm going to use today, and the quote I'm going to be doing, I've already kind of scripted out on this piece of paper, but what I'm going to do is use my Molotow masking pen. So this is a pen that has masking fluid in it, and what it does is you write with it, and it puts out the masking fluid, which is kind of like a little not gel, it's kind of like rubber cement. You write with it and it's blue, but it dries and then you can put watercolor over it, and wherever you've drawn, it resists the watercolor or whatever ink or whatever you decide to put over it. So I'm going to go ahead and write my quote out with the Molotow masking pen on some watercolor paper. This is from Canson. I have a large watercolor pad and I just cut down pieces to what I need. So I have this huge 12 by 18 inch Canson watercolor pad, but of course you don't have to get one this large. I've cut it down to an 8 by 10. I wanted to show you how you could make a finished piece and how somebody asked if I could show how I would package it to give to somebody, so I'll show you that at the end as well. And then I will also make this into a printable, which you can download on my in my shop at craftygenscow.com on Monday. So this video will be uploaded on Sunday, and then you can download the free printable on Monday. So like I said, I've already kind of scripted this out. The quote that I'm going to use today is "Be so good they can't ignore you," and that's from Steve Martin, and I absolutely love that quote. I'll talk a little bit more about that as I'm scripting. You'll have to pardon me for my hands. I spilled some ink on them and it will not come off, so it's just going to be that way. And I'm just going to use my pencil and my Moo eraser. I got this eraser in the fine arts section at Hobby Lobby, and I'll link to that. And I'll link to all of the products that I use in the video description as well as over on my blog. I will do a blog post this time. I have been not doing blog posts on these Script and Uplift videos, but I definitely will. So I'm going to go ahead and I think I'm going to move the camera so that it has a different angle this time, so it's a little bit less of me right over what I'm writing, and so that you can see it a little bit from the side. So I'll go ahead and do that, and I'll do the quote on my watercolor paper.
So I'm going to start out with a bit of tracing paper because I already had that quote kind of planned out in my sketchbook, and I use my sketchbook a lot when I'm just watching TV. So I'm just tracing that, and then I'm going to do like I used to do in grade school, where they teach you to trace something and then you can color on the back of it with pencil and then trace over the top of it again to transfer that pencil marking. So that's what I'm doing here. And as I'm doing that, I'm just going to talk briefly about this quote today. And I have loved this quote ever since I heard it, and how wise is Steve Martin? I didn't know. But be so good they can't ignore you. And this is a quote for me that applies more to business or trying your best, or, trying your best at something, or working hard to achieve a goal, or something like that. And for me, this has helped me a lot in my business, to where sometimes we feel like we're not good enough, or like all of our hard work goes unnoticed. And this quote motivates me to just go the extra mile, to do those extra steps, to do the things that seem over the top, that seem like they might be it's more than maybe what everyone else is doing. I'm doing something a little bit more. I'm doing the best that I possibly can. Be so good that no one can ignore you. That there's no way that you can be ignored, because you're putting out the best work that you possibly can. And I just love thinking of this and thinking about what things can I do to kind of set me apart from the rest. And of course, I'm not perfect at living up to this standard, but it's something that I can keep in mind. And this is a quote that I definitely want to hang on my wall to remind me to always try my very best and to always go that extra mile, to do that extra step, to be so amazing that there's no way that I'll go unnoticed because somebody's going to recognize that hard work because I've put in so much effort. And even if you feel like you love something so much and you want to do it, but maybe you don't quite have the talent that maybe some other people have, guess what? You can put in the work. There is always room to grow. There's always room for you to follow your dreams and achieve those goals that you set for yourself. And so this is something that I try to live by and that I'm continually reminding myself. And so I thought that I would kind of script this quote out to be a consistent reminder of that. So back to a little bit about what I'm doing. You can see that I've gone ahead and traced my quote onto my paper, and now I'm using that masking fluid pen to just write, just tracing the letters. So I'm not doing this in a typical brush script style where it has thicks and thins. This is just kind of a single line style of writing, which I still use the same techniques that I use in my brush script. Like I form the letters in the same way and I make it look in the same way. It just doesn't have the thicks and thins. And I like writing like this sometimes. So you can see that I have, it's that the fluid is nice and blue so that you can see it. And while I go ahead and wait for that to dry, I'm just going to test out a few colors, and I'm using a large size 8 round brush to test out some colors, and I did that off camera. And now I'm going to tape down this watercolor paper to my work surface, and this is just so that the paper doesn't warp so much because I'm going to use a lot of water, and it does warp a little bit, but it doesn't really matter once you put it in a picture frame or something like that anyway. So I just pulled it up so that I pulled up the camera so you could see what it looks like. I just have it taped on all 4 sides, and that masking fluid is nice and dry, just making sure it's really flat on the table there. And once I get that nice and flattened out, the way that I'm going to do this is to put a whole bunch of water, just clean water, onto the quote, just all around it. And then I'm going to drop the watercolor into it. And this is going to make the watercolor flow and blend really nicely. And I'm going to use a variety of colors of blue. I'm using my Zig Kuretake Gansai Tombi watercolors. I'll be sure to link to all of the products that I use below. And I'm just kind of dropping in the color. The awesome thing about watercolors is you don't have to be careful, and it might look crazy at first, but when it dries, it always looks really pretty and really cool. I'm just using 3 different colors here, getting those to blend, and then I'll put a little bit more of that kind of aqua color down at the bottom. And just playing around. It looks kind of gross now, but you'll see when it dries how pretty it looks. And then I'm just taking a little bit of extra paint and kind of splattering it around the quote. And then I'll come back here and talk to you a bit while I peel. I'm going to let this dry completely before I peel off that masking fluid.
Okay, so now this is dry, and for some reason these watercolors, even when they're dry, they have a little bit of a sheen to them, and I think it's when you don't put enough water into the watercolor pan and mix it up enough, then you get that little bit of a sheen. But it doesn't bother me. I think it's kind of pretty actually. So what you're going to do once it's dry is you can just kind of, if you can get it with your finger and just rub off that masking fluid. And now if you have an adhesive remover, so there are lots of companies that make these types of adhesive removers. You can just use that to rub it off, and it's really a lot easier. And sorry if this is shaking. My camera is attached to my table, so as I'm rubbing, it's kind of coming up a little bit. So I'm just going to rub all of that off, and this is the funnest part because you get that reveal, and you can see how pretty it looks when I do that. I'll just keep rubbing until I get all of it off. If you're just using your finger, it's a little bit harder to make sure you get all of it, but you can definitely still do that. Now this masking pen, it's a 2mm tip. They have larger ones, but that's the smallest one that they have. So if you were wanting something a little bit thinner, then you could just use masking fluid, which you can buy in any art supply section, and you can use that with a paintbrush if that's something that you're interested in. And if you're interested in learning a little bit more about hand lettering, I do have my introductory brush script class, and I do show you how to use masking fluid in that class. So you can check that out at classes.craftygenscout.com. So I'm just going to finish rubbing this off. Now, you noticed probably that I had, when I first originally showed this quote, it says who it's by at the bottom. That's something that I will go ahead and add in Photoshop. Now, if I'm going to give this away as a gift, then I will just take my white pen. I'll show you here in just a second. Let me finish erasing this. So you can see it's not like absolutely perfect. I can keep rubbing it and get it a little bit better, especially these spots right here. So this is where this kind of tool really comes in handy. Now, if you don't let the masking fluid be thick enough, then it will bleed through. So that's kind of why I went over it a few different times. So there's that. Now, if I want to add Steve Martin's name at the bottom, because I do want to attribute it to who it's by, I'm just going to use my white Jelly Roll pen from Sakura. And just carefully write it in at the bottom. And if it's not quite bright enough or dark enough for your liking, you can just go over it again. So like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I did have a few people ask me about how I would give this away or how I would package it to give to somebody. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this up, and then I will go back to the overhead camera and show you how I would do that. Okay, so here's another glance at the finished product. Now, if I had been thinking a little bit more about it, I might have written this a little bit larger so that the words were a little bit more clear. And in the printable that I make, I will definitely be kind of touching this up a little bit so that it's definitely easier to read. But let me show you what I do to give this as a gift. So I do it one of two ways. The first way is I have these pieces of chipboard that I received in old kits. They kind of keep the paper steady. So if you order any kinds of scrapbook paper online or anything like that, it comes with these really thin chipboard sheets, and I always keep them. And so I cut it down to 8 by 10, and I can just back that on here. I'm just thinking about how I get fine prints when I order them, stuff like that. So I'd put that in there, and then I also have, I did a yard sale where I sold a bunch of my scrapbooking paper once, and so I bought these little bags, and these come, if you order different products, you'll see these kinds of bags that have has an adhesive on one side, and then it's just a bag that you can place things in. So I bought a bunch of these at a local paper supply store. Well, I'll link to a place where you can buy them online if that's something you're interested in. I bet you can buy them in the correct sizes. Mine is 12 by 12, so I just end up making it work for me. But so what I would do is just slide it in, and then fold this over on the back. Now, I like to add a little bit of a personal touch and put some washi tape. Now, I would probably choose maybe a cuter washi tape than this, although this one is cute, like it's not bad. So I've got that, and then I would take off the adhesive here and fold that down. And then you can, it's like nice, it looks professional, and then I would likely tie a ribbon around it. And this is a ribbon that I have left over from my Felicity Jane kits that I get, but any ribbon that you like will do. I think a nice thick ribbon is good, and you can just tie a bow like that. So that would be one way I would do it, and then you could attach a little tag if you wanted with the person's name on it or whatever. The other way that I have also given away art prints is in a frame. And I just usually buy an inexpensive frame at Walmart or Target, and then somebody can change the frame out if they want to, and it's only a few dollars, so it doesn't offend me or anything, and I always tell them that. So I just have this cheap 8x10 frame that I got at Walmart, and let me just show you what it looks like when you stick it in. And then, of course, the recipient could keep it in the frame, or if they have a specific frame that they're wanting, they could use their own. And you could give that to them in a frame like this. And it looks really nice all framed up. And then I would also, again, I would just tie a ribbon around it. I don't like to wrap these up, but you definitely could wrap it if you wanted to give it that way. But I think it just looks really nice with a ribbon tied around it and a little tag hanging down with their name. So that's obviously a quick and ugly bow, but you get the idea of what I mean. So that is going to be today's video. Now don't forget that tomorrow on my in my shop at craftygenscow.com, or you can head to craftygenscow.equid.com to get directly to the shop. You can download a printable for free. Like I mentioned, I probably would clean this up just a little bit in digitally so that it looks a little bit nicer, but that will be available for you tomorrow. I hope that you've enjoyed, and if you'd like to see, if you have any motivational or inspirational quotes that you'd love to see me hand letter, leave a comment and I will definitely consider it. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope that you have a great Sunday. Bye-bye.